In the late 1990s, there was a lot of effort on the part of parents who had children with autism to try and engage basic scientists into getting into autism research. So my first entry into autism was actually through Cure Autism Now, which was an organization started in Los Angeles. The head of that organization, a woman named Portia Iverson, called me up one day and said, "Amaral, you study the amygdala, you got to start studying autism." So she invited me to a meeting down in Los Angeles where she showed us what young children with autism actually look like, and she tried to get us motivated to do autism research. And in fact, she helped me to get a small grant to start studying the autistic brain. Believe it or not, that was the only autism research being done at UC Davis. There was nothing else being done. So when the parents came to the dean of our school of medicine here, I'm in the Department of Psychiatry, they asked my chairman, a guy named Tom Anders at the time, to sort of investigate whether these parents who wanted to start the Mind Institute had something that we could get involved in. And he knew I had gotten this teeny tiny little grant to do work on autism. He said, "Hey, Amaral, why don't you be research director of this Mind Institute?" So that was really the entry. I mean, it was very, very informal. And in the first months, even the first year, we were really trying to determine whether UC Davis was the right place to have. In fact, I think Tom Anders thought that if he convened a group of faculty from places like Stanford and other places, that people would say, "No, don't do it at UC Davis, do it at one of those other places." But in fact, we kept hearing from people because we had this emerging scientific enterprise, a lot of effort in neuroscience, that this was really the place to start it. So then we had to figure out what we were going to do. And so this was 1998 when the parents really said, we want to get this going. And they really had these sort of guiding principles, which were really incredibly helpful to us. So they had this idea that we had to start doing multidisciplinary, more biologically based research. We convened some focus groups and we started getting faculty to give us advice on what the Mind Institute should be. And we then started recruiting people as well, because again, as I said, there wasn't anybody here doing autism research. We wanted to get everything rolling really quickly, so we recruited some really high-powered people like Sally Rogers and Sally Ozenoff and others to really advise us, because these were experts in autism, and they were able to advise us of how we should move things forward. We also, one of the things that I'll never forget is that the families, even though we were actually running out of temporary space on the main campus and we had some temporary space here at the medical center, so we didn't have a house, we didn't have a home, we didn't actually move into the Mind Institute until 2003, so 5 years later, right? Parents were incredibly, motivating and also were able to get the state of California to help fund the Mind Institute, because in essence, what they said was that the state of California provides support to families who have children with autism. And they had figured out that the lifetime support of the state of California to one family was going to be on the order of $2.5 to $3 million. And at the time that they were launching the idea of the Mind Institute, there were about 6 new families a day coming into the Department of Developmental Services who were going to get that $3 million lifetime. So they could go back to this, to the state assembly and to our legislature and say, today we just put California in debt by $18 million to help these families with autism. Tomorrow it's going to be another $18 million. We have to do something to stem the tide. And what was stemming the tide was going to be the Mind Institute. They were able to go into Pete Wilson's office and essentially get $1 million check to get us going. That doubled the next year and doubled again. And so now we had funding. We didn't have buildings, we didn't have people. And so the parents said, don't put that money away, make it work right now. And so what we did for the first few years was to actually have a grant program. So we invited grant applications throughout the state of California. And over the first 3 or 4 years, we funded around $6 million of research. A lot of those people that we funded are now the sort of bigwigs of autism research. They have their own laboratories, they're doing spectacular research, and it was because the Mind Institute invested money in their young careers that they now are continuing doing autism research. But we quickly realized that the vision of the parents, which was to bring scientists and clinicians together, working in the same place, it really wasn't being implemented by this grant program. We needed to do something different. And what we needed to do was build a place for the Mind Institute. In 2000, we started planning. Chuck Gardner, one of the founding parents, had weekly meetings, Thursday meetings. And we would talk about some aspect of the design of the Mind Institute that we're in. And if you weren't at that meeting, you didn't have any input. So, it was one of those things. We didn't postpone the meeting for 3 weeks from now. It was either you be there or be square. You weren't going to get any input into that aspect of the building. And in a really short period of time, I don't remember exactly, I think it was just like 6 months, we had an architect who was working with Chuck, and we had an interior decorator who had children with autism who helped us design the buildings, really from scratch because there was no model for it. And September 8th of 2001 was the groundbreaking. And literally less than 2 years later, we occupied the buildings, and that really launched the real formal and unique enterprise of the Mind Institute, people working together to try and solve these neurodevelopmental disorders.